Okay, boss. Today we are focusing on building the database, boss. So SAP HANA is a database, right? So today we're going to start with how do we build database in HANA? How do I build my tables, or how do I build my schema, and how do I get the data into it, and sequences, views, and all those database artifacts. Okay. So here we're going to use. So when you look at SQL, you'll have data definition language statements or data manipulation statements. See, SQL is all about statements like select statement, create statement, delete, drop, all this. So when you look at building the database, we're going to focus more on data DDL, data definition language statements. You will have this PDF. See, you will have a different set of statements like DDL, DML, procedural statements, transaction management. You'll have different, all the statements, all the SQL statements are grouped with different grouping, like say DDL, data definition language statements. You'll have data manipulation statement, procedural statements, transaction statements, session management, controlling access, data export or import statements, system management scenarios, all this. Now, when you see a building database, we are focusing mainly on what? What is this here? Data definition language statements, which is mainly three things. One is create, alter, and then drop. Three major statements. Say, I would like to create a table, then I use create statement. Let's say I would like to drop a table, I will use what? Drop statement. I would like to alter the table, then I would use alter. Any database artifact, let's say you want to create a view, then you will say what? Create view. You want to drop a view, you say drop view, and you want to alter, then alter. So majorly three things: create, alter, and drop. I'll send this PDF later, but you'll get this. That's okay. So we are mainly focusing on DDL statements, which is mainly responsible for creating the database for. But you don't have to really focus more on this DDL statement, because for pretty much, let's say I would like to create a table, you have a UI available for it. Hello? Hello? You,
Muted.
so then you're not connected. Did you connect your headphones or something? I think yours is Seshu Reddy or what? Which one? Rajan, it's now. Can't you hear now? Because others are able to hear.
Muted.
This should be something from your problem from your end. That's what. When others are able to hear, you're not able to hear. There should be some problem from your side. See whether you booted your system or something. Yeah. Now session is running, so tomorrow we'll do that after the class. Yeah. Any of this will be recorded. Don't worry. Tomorrow we'll check that. Okay. Now we're in the class. I can't do anything now. Yeah. 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 Okay, boss. So for pretty much when you look at this DDL statements, you don't have to really worry much about writing the statements, because for pretty much for DDL you have an UIs built. For example, so I want to create a table. I can go with what? Create table statement, or I can, when I right click on the schema, I have option as what? New table. I will also have UI where I can go to creating my table also. So you have both the flexibilities. Wherever you have both, because end user is not worried whether you're creating a table with SQL statement or with the UI. Ultimately, he wants a table out. Okay. So for pretty much of DDL, you have the UI available. So don't focus more on the SQL. Okay. Focus more on the UI part. That will make you simple. Okay. Now let's start. Now first we are focusing on schema bus. So schema is itself is called as a database. Let's say a HANA database, you'll have HANA database server. Logical grouping of database itself is what we call it as schema bus. So sometimes schema itself is called as a database. Schema itself is called as a database. For example, now let's say I have my BW system. Let's say this is my BW system, and if I see the status of this, I know that this is playing on what HANA database, and what is it? It says owner is what SAP ABAP one. This is nothing but the schema name. If I go to schema here, so you'll have a schema with this name, and all the data dictionary of this BW system will be maintained into this schema here. Say for example, I create a cube. All the fact table and dimension tables will be into this schema. So I create a DSO. All the data dictionary will be into this schema. So schema itself is referred as a database for it. It's a logical grouping of all your database artifacts is what we call it a schema. Okay. Okay. Now let's say I would like to create a schema bus. How do we create? For this, there is no UI, but simple. Like you open the SQL editor. Okay. This is my SQL editor, and then I use a statement create sch create schema and name of the schema bus. Okay, and you can I'll just say 7 cubics is my schema. Select this and say execute. And if you refresh this, you should find your schema. What is it? 7 cubics, but there's no database objects as of now in it. No tables, no views, nothing, because we've not yet created. We just formulated a schema here. So create schema. Schema name is a statement. How you go. There's no UI for creating schema. You have to create with SQL like this. Create schema, schema names, and that is one. Let's say now look at this. I've logged in with which user here? System user. I've logged in with system user, but I would like to create a schema which will be owned by user cubex user 7. Then I would say create schema. Say this is my schema name. I'll say owned by whom? Cubex user. So I use this statement owned by, because if I just say create schema, schema name, schema is created by default, that will be owned by the person who is creating it. But say let's say I've logged in with user 1, but I'm trying to create a schema which has to be owned by user 2. Then I would say create schema, schema name owned by a different user. Now when I get this out, and will you get to see that cubex user 7 here, which is a POD user? You don't get to see anything here. But if I log in with this user, cubex user 7, if I go to catalog and do I see this user, POD user schema? So like this, you can also control it, the schema to be owned by different. By default, if you say create schema, that will be owned by the user who is creating it. But if you're trying to create a schema which has to be owned by a different person, then you can say what? Owned by. Yeah, each BW system will have its own schema, which is what we refer to as BW schema bus. Yeah. Okay, this is fine. And one more point to be noted is, for example, now let's say I create a new user. So I'm creating it as cubex user 8, and then say some password. and I just create this user, and let's say I connect to the system with this new user. So when you create a new user, by default it creates a schema with the same name. So for every user you create, you will find a schema with the same name. For every user you create, it would have the schema with the same name, which will have the complete access to that user. And HANA create the प्रति user को schema create होता है user specific. Which one? I don't know. New user? Yeah, you can create. But my intention is to show you, if you create a new user, you will have a schema with the same name by default. And if you want to create new schema, you'll say create schema so and so. And if you're logged in with user one and you want to create a schema for a different user, you would say what? Create schema name owned by a different user. That's it. Okay. So I'm going to leverage this schema, which is 7 cubic. And one more point I would like to stress here is, if you see there are a lot of schemas, and you see schemas with saying sys bi, sys big, and any schema which is starting with sys is the ready-made schema bus. In the interview point of view, they're asking what are the default schemas maintained in HANA database. So these are the default schemas what comes in sys bi, sys big, sys statistics, sys access. All these are the system schemas, means which will be maintained by the system. We are not doing anything. But these two are really important. Okay. Okay. Now let me tell you this sysbig. Now what is importance of the sysbig? I said see, HANA is all about bringing raw data into the tables. On top of these tables, you build your virtual models by using attribute view, analytical view, or calculation view, and expose it for reporting. Right. Now the logic here is, for every attribute view, or for every analytical view, or every calculation view you activate, it creates some objects in the backend. It will deploy some objects which are called as column views. We'll discuss later what is column views, but when you activate your HANA models, it does create some column views in the backend, and those views are created in sysbig schema. So all the objects which get generated by the system in the backend will be into this schema called sysbig. For example, I create one calculation view. It has to create some column views in the backend, and those column views are generated in sysbig schema. For example, if you want to see, so I have this view. Let's say this is a calculation view, which is ZCV sales overview. Yeah? This was already deployed. I mean, deployed in the sense, let's say you have activated it. Okay? So when I activate this, what happens in the backend is it does create some column views in the sysbig. If you go to sysbig, what is this column view? Say filter. I just don't want to see all that CV underscore. What is my view? CV underscore sales underscore overview. When I do this, so we are only, ours is not 5 cubics, ours is 6 cubics. See, 6 cubics models. What is this? That's actually column view. We'll see what is column view later, but that's actually column view. And this column view will have all the definition. If you open this, it will have all the coding in the back. This is all formulated by the system. So when you basically deploy your HANA models, it does create some catalog objects in the backend. System will generate some catalog objects in the backend, and which is a column view. All those catalog objects, or nothing but column views, are generated in sysbig schema. Okay, boss. So any object you create in the HANA modeling content, if it needs to generate any catalog objects into database objects, and all those catalog objects will be generated in sysbig schema. For example, or let's say when I right click on a package, I can say new what is procedure. I would go with defining all the logic. It when I activate this, it actually creates a stored procedure in, the stored procedure must be in some schema. It creates in which schema now? Sysbig schema. If I go to my if I go to some schema and say create a procedure, then the procedure is into that schema. But if I go to modeling content and create my stored procedure, it gets created in sysbig schema. And a default schema for all the generated objects will be sysbig schema. Very, very important. And then you'll have one more schema called what is sysbi bus. Okay, yeah. Next is what? SysBI is again very, very important. Uh, this mainly have some standard tables relevant for time database. Time relevant data will be maintained in this schema called SysBI. For example, I have a date bus. For a given date, I would like to know what is a day, what is a month, what is a year, what is a quarter, what is a weekday, all those detailed time information I would like to have. So all this time relevant data is maintained in your SysBI schema. If I expand this SysBI schema and if I expand tables, these are the important ones. Look at this. You'll have something called what? M underscore fiscal underscore calendar, M underscore time underscore dimension. These are the time relevant tables. These tables holds the time data in it. So when I want to create a view which basically gets me time data, then I can leverage these tables and create my views. So these are the standard tables which maintains my time data ante for a given, let's say the granular could be anything, let's say day level details or week level, month level, anything depending on you fill in. Yeah. So if I said day level, then for each day you will know what is a month, what is a weekday, what is a year, what is a quarter. These tables are blank. These tables have no data. Week, hour, whatever it is, all those can be derived from this table. But when you see a new system, these tables will be blank. These tables will be blank. So we do a process called generate time data to fill this. Now, see, you see M underscore fiscal and M underscore time, right? We have two sets here. One, and this is two other sets. This is all together as one set and this is one set. Now, what is the difference here? If you generate your time data based on financial year, the time data will be maintained in this table. Which table? M underscore fiscal underscore calendar. If you generate your time data based on normal calendar year, then it does fill data into these tables. Which is one? M underscore time underscore dimension or year or week or month. See, ultimately, tables will hold time data. These tables are initially blank. We'll have to perform a process called generate time data to fill these tables out. Then these tables can be leveraged in modeling, in creating my virtual models. So, but while filling these tables by performing generate time data, we have two options. One is Gregorian and calendar bus. Gregorian is nothing, sorry, financial year or Gregorian bus. Financial means what? It basically fills the table called M underscore fiscal underscore calendar with all the financial year details. If you generate based on the calendar, it does fill in table data into which table? M underscore time underscore dimension based on calendar year. For example, let's say, let me see, there is a data in this table. So let me drop this. I'll right click and show delete. I'm saying what? Delete all rows. All my data has been dropped now. So if I try to see the content, do you see any database? There's no data. So I would like to I would like to fill this table. I would like to fill this table with all the time data for me. Then what I'll do? Help. Then what do you say? quick view. Then there's option called generate time data bus. Now when you go to generate time data, I would like generate time data in this SP9 system. Yes, it will ask me whether do you want to generate time data based on fiscal year or Gregorian. Gregorian is nothing but calendar year, fiscal is nothing but fiscal year bus. So if I go with fiscal year, it does fill data in what? M underscore fiscal under calendar table. If I go with Gregorian, I'll go with Gregorian. You want data from 2012 to let's say 2015. And what is granularity bus? Granularity ante, sorry, you would like generate time data from 2012 till 2015, 12, 13, 14, and 15, 4 years of data. Now, in this table, do you want to maintain entry for each day wise or week wise or month wise? What is the least granularity? I would let go with day wise, and that's a finish. So what happens from 2012 to 2015? It considers each day as one record. It formulates one record for each day. For each day, it will have the information about year, month, quarter, all this week, hour, all this stuff will have. Now successfully done. If I go to this table and say display content, you start seeing this data. Forget about first two, three, but what does it say? Jan what? Jan 2012. If you bottom completely, it is just showing only 1,000 records. Now you see data till what? 2014. Okok record or September 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. Each day is one record because you said granularity is day level. Now once data is generated into this table, these tables creating my HANA models wherever would like to have analysis on the time wise. Okay, now was fine. We'll see that later. But yes, sys BI is, and there's still more information to look at because if I go with financial year, it does ask me something called variant. We'll see all those stuff later. Yeah, but the sys for now, what sys BI will hold all the tables relevant for time data. That's it. And where the tables are filled with what? Generate time data. That's it. Mhm. And you'll have some more ready-made schemas, but these are the two important ones which we mainly deal with. And you'll have another schema. This is for system user. You'll have another schema called what? Sysbus. This schema will have all the system standard tables, system repository and coach. For example, now I create some tables. Definitely, there should be some standard table in the backend which will hold information about every table in my HANA database. Or there should be some table which maintains information about every column of a table in my HANA database. అంటే మొత్తం సిస్టమ్ మెటాడేటా అంతా ఒక స్టాండర్డ్ టేబుల్స్ పెట్టుకోవాల్సిందే కదా. All those will be in this schema. Which one? Sys. It does use a keyword sys for all the system defined objects. Yeah. So if you go to tables, see the lot of tables here. All these tables are used to store your metadata of your HANA system. What SAP does is, they say you cannot really understand this table straight away. To simplify your understanding, SAP has done it. SAP has created some views on top of those tables. These are like database views. These are not like HANA model. These are like normal database views. Remove the filter and try to see the lots of views. These are normal database views which are built on those tables to give you the information. Say for example, I have what is this table? What is the view? Tables. This will show me information about every table in HANA. Right click and so open content. They'll tell me schema name, table name, comments, and then go with table. Is it whether it's what type of column is table is it? Whether look at this. Whether auto merge is enabled on this table or not. You get all the details of this table into this file, into this table. Atla, you'll also have some views like we'll discuss on those. You'll have another what is it? Table columns will give me information about every column of a table. అట్లా views details అన్న దాంట్లో ఉన్నాయి, users details అన్న ఒక table లో ఉన్నాయి. Every these are the standard tables of repository tables of HANA which will maintain entire metadata of HANA database. HANA database table గురించి, యూజర్ల గురించి, స్కీమాల గురించి, వ్యూస్ గురించి, సీక్వెన్సెస్ గురించి, ట్రిగ్గర్స్ గురించి, ప్రొసీజర్స్ అన్ని ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ స్టాండర్డ్ టేబుల్స్ లో పెట్టుకుంటుంది. బట్ యూ కెనాట్ రియలీ అండర్స్టాండ్ స్టాండర్డ్ టేబుల్స్ స్ట్రైట్ అవే. So SAP has built in some views on top of those tables which can make you more clearer. It joins tables and give it to you. But you can always see the definition of the view also. When it's open definition, if you go to create sheet, we can see really it is this view is built on what tables in the backend. You can understand this definition and see on which tables this view is being built on. Okay. We'll start using this whenever it is required. That's pretty much okay. And you'll have other schemas normal. These are like sys access, sys statistics, sys security, sys repo is all fine. But main ones are sys BI, sys big, sys are the important ones. Okay, good. That's about schema. Next we want to create a table into that schema. But instead of seeing all the schemas, I can apply filter on this. Right click on the catalog folder. I can say filter. I can just give some string. I just want to filter everything which is starting with cubics. Or I would prefer to see only this with schema with 7 cubics. So you can filter. Even there are a lot of schemas, you can filter out. Okay, good. Now next is on the table. So does your HANA support row store and column store both? Now let us see how do we create a column store table and how do we create a row store table. First we're trying to, this is like simple one I'm starting with, showing you how do we create a column store table. Now just open up your SQL editor, okay. So I would say, now look at this, I'm using a statement called what? Create. Whenever you want to create any database artifact, we would leverage DDL statement, which is about create. If you want to create table, you will say create table. If you want to create a view, you will say what? Create view. Create. If you want to create a sequence, you will say create sequence, create trigger, and create to start out all DDL. Yeah. So create. What is that you want? This is the nothing but what? Type of table, and this is a keyword table. So create column table is a keyword. So create is a statement, and after create, what is it do you want to create? You want to create what? Table. What type of table is it? Column table. So create column table. Then name of the table. I want it in what? So see, all your database objects will be qualified with your schema name. Schema name dot table, schema name dot view, schema name dot sequence. Because table pair పెడితే ఆ table ఏ schema అని చెప్పాలి. It is always qualified by schema name. Okay. Now say what? Schema name is what? 7 cubics dot what? This is a table name what? What is the table name I want? EMP. Now the point here is, do I need to specify this double quotes here? The technical names, the table name, view name, what you give, we call them as identifiers. We call them as identifiers. Generally, it is not mandatory that you put double quotes, but say, for example, I want a table name is like this, EMP table. So does this table name have some space? If I don't put double quotes in this case now, it will treat EMP as a separate word and then table as a separate word. But if I still want to have a table name with some special kind of space like that, I would, if I say double quote, then it treats EMP space table as one keyword. So when any database object names, which we refer it as identifiers, if you enable them with double quotes, you can go with special characters into it. If you don't have double quotes, you cannot have special characters into it. But schema name కావచ్చు, టేబుల్ నేమ్ కావచ్చు, ఏదానికైనా స్పెషల్ క్యారెక్టర్స్ ఉండాలంటే డబుల్ కోట్స్ ఉండాల్సిందే. స్పెషల్ క్యారెక్టర్ ఏం లేదంటే డబుల్ కోట్స్ అవసరం లేదన్నమాట. So start using double quotes for every case so that it does satisfy in every case. And then open the parenthesis and then close it. Now within this open and close, you start listing out the column names what you want. Column name first, even column name is also an identifier. So I want column name as what? EMP ID. INT indicates what? Its data type is what? Integer. And what does this keyword not null indicates? It can never be blank. When I say not null, if I'm trying to insert a record into the table, value into this column is mandatory because it's a primary key field. This cannot be left blank. That's what I'm saying, not null. So I'm trying to insert record into this table. I cannot escape without entering a value to this column. It can never be null. That's what I'm saying, not null. And I'm saying this column is going to be primary key of, and then comma. So this is a definition of column 1. Then column 2 EMP name, and I want, when I say varchar is what? Alphanumeric data, and this of length what? 20 characters it can hold. Since this is the last column, you don't put a comma and then close your parenthesis and semicolon. This is the SQL statement how you create a table, column table. Okay, boss. Now just select this and say what? Execute this. Say F8. Now under 7 cubics, I should start seeing the table. Now table, what is this here? EMP table. Right? Okay. I can even open this definition and say open definition. See that table name is EMP space table. What type of table is this? Column store, and it is under which schema? 7 cubics, and this is column 1 and this is column 2. EMP ID and EMP name. And for EMP ID, it is set to not null and it is set to what? Primary keys. This is about creating a table. That is one point to be observed. And one more thing what I want you to observe is, look at this. Look at the symbol. Look at the icon of this table. You see the lines drawing vertically. It indicates that it's a column store table. The icon of the table indicates that it's a column store table. So same next I would let me finish this. Next I would like to create a row store table first. Now create, then it's the same except this. What is the keyword I'm using? Row. If you use keyword column, then it creates column store table. If I use row, it creates what? In in other databases, you just say create table. So there's no types of tables. But here I've got row or column, so I'll have to use a keyword explicitly to indicate whether it's going to be column store table or a row store table. Create row table, and in which schema? What is it? 7 cubics, EMP row, and the same 2 columns, but not null and not primary. Is all same. And select this and say active. And now you see another table into this. So I've got EMP table, and look at the icon here. You see the lines what horizontal now that indicates it's a row store. You can see the definition of this row store, 7 cubics and EMP row. Okay. And you can also do this way. If you're not really comfortable writing this SQL statement, what you can do is, if you open the definition of an table like this, if you select the table name and say right click export SQL, that will show me the SQL statement which is used to create the table. See, I can just rename something. I can just execute this again. EMP row copied. I can also do this way if you really don't have things. So apart from creating this table from SQL statement, I can also create with UI also. Like in SC11 in ABAP system, how do you go creating a table? I can do it from here also. So I can either in the schema, I can either select this tables folder, right click on this, you get option as what is this? New table, or when you right click on the schema on top of schema, it's also you get the option as what? New table. Either way you can do new table. I want EMP some UI schema, and then I want it as what? Column store table, and I want first I can drop down. I can say whether you want column store table or what. Row. This is what we'll discuss later, not now. Row store or column store. Then I want EMP ID I want, and I want drop down. You can choose any of these data types you want. Okay. I'll say integer and then primary key and not null. Then EMP name, and I want this length. If you want, you can specify your description of the columns as a comment. Okay. And then say activate. This is about creating it. But ultimately, when you're doing all this UI, it actually does execute a statement in the back. What is it? Create column table so and so with this column, with this column. You can either go about writing your SQL, or if you define things in UI, it actually creates a SQL statement and executes it in the back. Sandhya, for DDL statement, I'm asking you not to focus more on writing SQL script because you have the flexibility of creating with UI. Because end user is not really worried whether you're creating the table with UI or with SQL. It's all about having table or not. That's okay, boss. Yeah. Now what is the doubt? Yeah, yeah. You want to see that method, select star from tables. If I don't specify schema, by default understand that it's schema, okay? Where sch schema underscore name is equal to what? 7 cubics, and table underscore name is equal to, say, which one you want? EMP row something, okay? So I want to see details of this. Schema name is 7 cubics, EMP row, so table ID is this. You'll have all the details of the table. Okay. So actually table view built on some standard tables in sys schema, which will have the metadata maintained into the tables. So like this, you can just create a simple table like this, okay? Next is, I would like to create a table by copying from an existing table which is already there. Let's say that there is already a table, and I would like to create a table which is copy of an existing one. Yeah. So how do I do this? First, I'm just creating a normal table here. Create column table so and so. And then don't worry about these statements. We'll get back to this. I'm just executing an insert statement so that I can insert some 3 records into this table. Take this one. Now you'll have a table called EMP base with some 3 records. You see the definition. This is a table created. And if I see the content of the table, I can see content here. You see those 3 records, E1, 2, and 3. So I have a table called EMP underscore base with these 3 results. When I say right click and say show content, you're actually executing select star from table, right? So now what I want to do is I would like to create a table which is actual copy of this table. So I say what create the 2 things you can do. You can use like, or you can use a sub select. Both can be used. You can use say what like and sub select. Now I'm saying what create column table, the new table name what you want, okay? Like what? This is what old table. Every database object gets qualified with what schema name. I'm saying create a new table EMP with the data table, which is the name of the table is this, which is like what? What is like EMP base? And if I just go with just like this, it only copies structure. No data is copied. But if I explicitly use a keyword with the data, then what? Data is also copied. So create table, which is the new table name, like the old table name with the data copies the structure and the data executes. EMP with the data, right? So I've got this table EMP with the data. There's already structure defined with same structure. And will it also have content? I can also open content straight away from here and also see the 3 records. But if I say same thing like create column table like, but if I use a keyword say with no data bus, see by default without data bus, I don't even have to use with no data. ఇక్కడ ఎగ్జిక్యూట్ చేసినా కూడా if I just say like there's no data copied, but if you still want explicit control that there's no data copied, then you can use a keyword with no data, I can say. With no data is my table name. Employee EMP with no data, then open the content. There's no data in it, but structure is defined. Now next way is by using the sub select. Okay. Now you have this table EMP base, right? If I just want to see all the data from the table, can I say select star from EMP base? What does this statement do? Now table on the data, the display just. based on the result of this select statement, I want the table to be created. I have a select statement. Based on the result of my select statement, I want the table to be created. Then I'll select this. Create column table so and so, and use a keyword what? As within the parenthesis, I specify the subselect. So first it executes this subselect statement, and based on the results of the select, it does create my table. And when I use this subselect, by default, it copies with the data. When I create a copy table with subselect, by default, it copies with the data here. And the same thing when I'm doing copy with subselect, but if I don't want the data, then I can say what? With no data. And I'm saying if I without anything with data without, by default, it copies the data because I'm using what? Subselect. Data sub, yeah. Okay, now the data is copied. But if I say same with no data, then if I use a keyword with no data, then by default, when you create a copy of the table subselect, by default the data is copied. But if you use a keyword with no data, then I use subselect, but no data is copied here. Only structure is created. Here with no data sub, open the definition. The table is there, but if I try to go to the content, there's no data copied. So by using this like operator or subselect, I can also create a table which is actually a copy of other tables. Okay. Changes. Yeah. Not only like if you create the table newly or whether you create a copy of something else, you can still alter it. Then for altering, we use alter statements. And then if you want to alter it from UI also, we can do. For example, I have copied this. Okay. And now I would like to alter this table. I can say right click on this table and say what? Edit. Add EMP designation varchar which is 10 and activate. This is what you wanted, right? No? If you want to change, then you're not see, by using subselect, you're not changing data types, only the data structures, data only. Because now, for example, if I say instead of selecting star, I would say if I select EM, then the copy table what gets created, it gets created only with employee ID column only. We can restrict the columns, but we cannot change the data types what is getting created. If I do this, sorry, it's already on the sub one. If I do, it creates sub one. But if I say definition, it will have now only. It's about controlling the select statement. How do you want it? See, now he's saying every time I'm writing table, should I always refer the schema name always? Not necessary. You should do that, but if you can eliminate this, if you don't want to do this, you can use some set schema. Now, what is schema set here? It says 7 cubics. For this entire session, this schema will be set, which is 7 cubics. In that case, now if I don't specify any schema name, by default understand that okay, these tables must be referred from where? From schema. If you కొట్టినా కూడా ఆ schema error ఏం కొట్టదు, because it understands that from which schema we can use that set schema session. Other session management statements అంటాం, set అంటాం. If you use a set schema for this current session, we said this schema has been set, and every database object I refer, by default it will be referring to 7 cubics. Okay, అలా రాసేయచ్చు. So now we've seen while creating a table, we're able to define a primary key. One more option I want to show. I can do this way. Say, create column table. I want to go with what? 7 cubics dot. And then I want to open go with some columns. int, and then I would say what, primary key here, and say not null, yeah. And then I want to go with EMP name something. Okay. This is about creating a table like this. This is one way of doing it. I can also specify the same way in different manner. Yeah? Instead of specifying primary key here, okay, after listing out the columns, at bottom I can say what, primary key, and specify your column. Which column we want as primary key? EMP. And last, don't put a comma here. And I can also do this. Okay, but this will be pretty much useful when you want to have multiple columns as primary. For example, I'm creating a mat plant table. Okay, now in this table, I want mat and plant together as primary keys. Ikkada primary key, ikkada primary రాయలేము. In that case, what I'll do, I'll use this kind of syntax and say what, primary key, what do you want? Mat ID, then what? You can have multiple columns as primary, which is composite, mat ID, then plant ID like this. And again, the max is 16 columns, you can make it as composite. Maximum you can have only 16 columns acting as primary key in this. Now both this table will be referred as what? Primary key in this case. If you go with this style of writing, you can only set one column as primary key. And if I go with this style, but here I have separated everything, last you will not have commas here. And if I go with writing this style, then I can specify multiple columns also separated with commas. If I go test demo 3, create JLS. If I open the definition, now for me both these columns are what? Primary key. Good. So that's like when multiple columns act as primary key, we refer it as what? Composite key. When we have two or more columns together acting as primary key in a table, we refer it as what? Composite key. And maximum number of columns which can be part of composite key 16. Not, we can only have a table with composite key with max of 16 columns only. Now you know what is primary key for this, and then there's concept called foreign key also. With the help of foreign key, what do? You relate the tables. When a primary key of one table takes part into the other table, we refer it as what? Foreign keys. So how do we relate the tables with foreign keys is what we're looking at. So we use these constraints here now. So what I'm doing is I'm just creating a table called what? What is department? Yeah, where department number and department name. Where department number is what? The primary. I just have department number and department name. Okay. And next you'll have a table called next I've got table called employees, which will have what? Employee ID, employee name, department, because I'll have employee number. Each employee will belong to department number, which is linked to what? This table. Then I'll say, look at this. So in this table, employee ID is a primary key, but I would like to associate this department number with this table as a what? Foreign key. Because in this table, department number is a primary key. When the primary key of this table takes part into this table, I would like to link them with as what? Foreign keys. And I'll say we use this keyword foreign key, which is what? Department number referencing to which table? In this table, I want my department number as foreign key, referencing to this table, which column? Department number. So 7 cubics department number, or delete cascade means when I say on delete cascade linking. Say, for example, let's say I have department number 1 here, and here I've got employee number something E001 belong to department number 1. If I delete this record department number 1 here, should I delete even the corresponding record into this table? Adi cascade restrict. If you say restrict, if there's an employee with department number 1, it will not allow you to delete entry here. It says there is a link maintained. If you delete department number 1 here, it will remove the link in that. But if you say cascade, even though there is a link, it can allow you to delete this. So on delete cascade, should it allow for deleting in the linking or not? That's the point. అదే వద్దనుకుంటే they will say what restrict అంటాం. Okay, and that's it. Mm. So you can use this concept of delete, cascade, or restrict to maintain the linking or not. So this is a primary key and foreign key to a different table like this. So with the help of primary key and foreign key, you can relate the tables. In one table, you'll have a column as primary key, and when the same column is being used in the other table, we want to refer to the other previous table as what? Foreign keys. Then you'll say references. Then there's another table. Okay. Now whatever you've been doing till now, I can also do that with UI bus. You don't have to really go with SQL. So right click, I'll say what? New table. Column store table. Then I can go with what? Column 1. I want it as say integer, primary key, and I want what? Column 2, varchar, let's say 20, and I want column 3. I will go with date, and also column 4. I'll go with timestamp. You can go with anything. That's okay. And then say what? Activate. Okay, and then say what? Activate. Like this, you can create your table on your own through UI bus. Okay. Now, when you're creating table, there are table types. You're creating column store, row store is fine. But within the column or row, there are multiple types of tables you can create. There is a concept called temporary tables. Now look at this. Now we're focusing on global temporary tables. Now what do you mean by global temporary tables? Okay, global temporary table. Now look at this. We use this keyword saying what? Global temporary antennas. Okay. Create global temporary column table. Now what do you mean by global temporary column? Now look at this. When you create global temporary table, the structure of the table is visible to everyone. The table object is visible to everyone, but the content of the table will be specific to this session alone. When I say global temporary ante, the structure, the table definition is visible to everyone, it's global for everyone. But the content of this table is specific to this particular session alone. This session ke కనిపిస్తుంది data, where on కనపడదు. For example, let's say I create this table saying what? Global temporary and then say create. Now when I say refresh, EMP, TMP column, EMP, TMP. Do you see this? Any user who has got access to the schema, can you see the table there? Anga table కనిపిస్తుంది. So let's say ఈ table I'm just inserting some 4 records. ఏంది 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, just insert. Records insert చేసినాము. Okay, and I would like to see the data in this table. It will do some select star from the table and table. You're just reading all the data from the table. When I read all data from this table, it should be any చూపిస్తుంది employees. 4 employees చూపిస్తుంది. If you go to SQL editor, I'm opening another. Is this like another session? ఈ సెషన్ వేరే కదా సార్. నౌ ఐమ్ జస్ట్ ట్రైంగ్ టు రన్ ద సేమ్. ఈడు కొడితే లేదు, ఈడు కొడితే ఉంది. దట్ ఈస్ గ్లోబల్ టెంప్. వెన్ ఇట్స్ గ్లోబల్ యాక్చువల్లీ వీడన్నా వేరే సెషన్లోకి పోయి ఆ టేబుల్ మీద సెలెక్ట్ కొడితే అసలు టేబుల్ లేదంటుందా, టేబుల్ ఉంది కానీ డేటా లేదంటుందా? అంటే టేబుల్ ఈజ్ అవైలబుల్ గ్లోబల్లీ. ఎవ్రీ వన్ విల్ హ్యావ్ ద టేబుల్, but the content of the table is specific to that particular session. Okay, no? That is global temporary table. Now, question is when do I use it? Generally, like we have like temporary table, like what do you call that? Internal tables. You can, when you want to use some scripting, then you can use this kind of tables. Okay, boss. Suppose now the question is while creating my UI, when let's say I'm creating a table with UI, where do I specify that it has to be temporary table? So I say new table, new UI, GLB, TMP something. Column, column, and then it's integer and the primary key. What is the tab here? Go to tab further properties, temporary table type, drop down and set it as what? Global. Okay, Nana? IPN. Now, if you do this, that is how you. Sorry. The primary key ఉంటుంది, not table. So I can also create my global temporary columns with UI also. Only thing is in the further properties, you set the temporary table type as what? Global. But in the table structure is visible to everyone, but the content of the table is visible or made active only in the session where it is inserted. ఏ సెషన్లో అయితే నువ్వు ఇన్సర్ట్ చేసినా ఆ సెషన్ వరకే అది కనిపిస్తాడు డేటా, వేరే కనపడదు. ఓకేనా? ఫైన్. And there is something local temporary now. You've seen global temporary and there is something local temporary. అట్లా టైం టేబుల్ లాగా వాడుకోవచ్చు. ఇప్పుడు when you're writing some logics in stored procedures, you get to have recurrent like this. You'll have some logic one, collect the results of logic one into one table, then take this and do some other logic. But for storing the temporary results, I can use this global temporary table or something. Okay. Then local temporary tables. So we have another type of table as local temporary table. Now, local temporary table, the definition of the table and the content of the table both are local to this session. Okay, the table structure and the content of the table both are local to this session alone. ఈ సెషన్లో ఉన్నంత వరకే ఆ టేబుల్ ఉన్నట్టు ఉంటుంది అన్నట్టు. చూడు బాస్, in case of global temporary table, when I opened a new session and executed a select statement on the table లేదని కొట్టిందా, టేబుల్ ఉంది కానీ డేటా లేదని చెప్పిందా? I was able to successfully run the select. It never said no table with this name only. It was able to recognize the table, but it could not recognize the data in it. That is global temporary. Yeah? Now I'm saying what is local temporary. I'm just creating this table. But whenever you're creating local temporary, the table name must start with hash and no primary key. Any temporary tables, no primary key allowed. Now create this table. And I'm just creating some 4 records into this table. And then let's say I'm using a select statement. A table of data. When I run this, sorry. Only cubic SQL about now. Select this and say what? Execute. Cannot use already వెళ్ళిపోయింది there. కనపడదులే కానీ ఇక్కడ ఇవన్నీ పెడదాం. And let me insert some 4 records into this table. And then I say select star from this. I see those 4 records, right? But if I go copy the same thing and open another session and run it, so that is specific to that session. ఇప్పుడు డేటా చూపితే టేబుల్ లేదంటుందా ఏమంటుంది చూడు could not find table or అసలు ఆ టేబుల్ లేదంటుంది సో ద టేబుల్ వాట్ యూ క్రియేట్ విచ్ ఇస్ లోకలీ స్పెసిఫిక్ దట్ ఆ సెషన్ రన్ అయిన సేపే ఆ టేబుల్ ఉంటుంది డేటా ఉంటుంది వాడుకుంటాం అంతవరకు దిస్ ఇస్ లోకల్ టెంపరీ సో వెన్ ఐమ్ రైటింగ్ ఏ stored procedures for storing temporary results can I create table like this ఆ ప్రొసీజర్ రన్ అయిన సేపే ఆ టేబుల్ ఉంటుంది only during that session being active I'll have the table and the result set stored into the table once the session is closed my data is gone clear in this bus ఇక్కడ నీకు టేబుల్ కూడా కనపడదు యూ డోంట్ గెట్ టు సీ దిస్ టేబుల్ ఇట్ కెనాట్ బి ద టేబుల్ ఇస్ నాట్ విజిబుల్ గ్లోబల్ స్ట్రక్చర్ is local and the data is also local to that session alone that is what local temporary table in case of global temporary table structure is global but the content is local to that session yeah what was it that's what I'm saying we will use this kind of tables only during writing stored process when you want to store some intermediate results manipulate and then free up the space still if everyone should be able to use the same table structure I have 2 requirements I would like to have some temporary table which will be leveraged in only one program let's say then I can just go with local temporary I want to have temporary table which should be used same table must be leveraged across multiple programs then I can instead of creating same table again and again I can use global temporary so data is temporary but structure is global where they can use in multiple programs okay boss we'll stop it here and then tomorrow we'll continue and tomorrow we'll still get on the same table we'll have more flexibility about logging I told you about auto merge how do we switch on or switch off the auto merge and how do we do forced merging and there's something called unload priorities and some more on the table because table main అన్నట్టు అంటే మొత్తం డేటాబేస్కి ఉండే మెయిన్ కాన్సెప్ట్ టేబుల్ సో దాని మీద చాలా ఉంటాయి అంటే హౌ టు డూ పార్టీషనింగ్ హ్యాష్ రేంజ్ రౌండ్ ఆల్టరింగ్ ద టేబుల్ అండ్ దెన్ దిస్ వాట్ ఐ వాంట్ టచ్ ఆన్ ద టేబుల్ మోర్ on so tomorrow will be more on the table and we'll get out the views yeah? If you don't specify anything it will be row store if you don't specify anything it will be a row store table if you explicitly specify that for column you have to explicitly specify that it has to be column store table or row store table okay and once you create column store I can also convert it to row store if you create row store I can always convert it back to column also by using alter statement I can alter the type we'll see that alter statements delta store అంటున్నా we'll discuss that too don't is saying let's say it is a column store and whenever I insert new record it gets into which one delta storage and main అది అడుగుతున్నావు కదా yeah we'll see that ఇవ్వకి లేదు for local because why the local temporary is not visible to everyone right globally so in the UI you don't have option saying local temporary like లేదు it has to be created with only SQL because only at the runtime of scripting you create those kind of tables so he's asking in the UI can you create local temporary tables no only global temporary because the structure is global you can create it with UI but local temporary tables you can't create with UI it has to be with SQL statement నేను ఏందో చూపించడానికి what was it you'll see this tomorrow but if you see it's a column store so you'll have main store and what delta record ఒకటి కూడా insert చేయలేదు that's a blank board now when we start inserting data you'll start seeing the memory occupied we'll be doing merging then the size of your delta will go down and it will increase what main అంతే నిజంగా నేను చూపిలేను ఇక్కడ నుంచి పోతా ఈ సైజ్ ఎక్కువ ఉంటుంది మర్జ్ కొట్టకుండా తగ్గుతుంది అంటే దాంట్లో వెళ్ళిపోయింది అన్నట్టు అట్లా చూడొచ్చు okay tomorrow we'll see on that auto merge and merging and all this okay fine create మామూలు క్యాలెండర్ say my calendar is say from Jan to December, and my financial year is from say April to March. Yearly పెట్టింది. మళ్ళీ ఇప్పుడు 2012-15 పెట్టినా రేపు 16 కావాలి ఇంకో 16 పెట్టి మళ్ళీ కొడితే అపెండ్ అవుతుంటాయి. ఇట్ కీప్స్ యాడింగ్ దట్ ఎంట్రీస్ టు ద టేబుల్. నేనేం చేసిన డిలీట్ చేసి కొట్టిన, అందుకు కొత్త వచ్చినాయి. నేను డిలీట్ చేయకుండా మళ్ళీ ఇప్పుడు జనరేట్ టైం డేట్ 2016 ఇస్తే మళ్ళీ 2016 డేట్ యాడ్ అవుతుంది అన్నట్టు. ఇట్ కీప్స్ అపెండింగ్ టు ద టేబుల్, డస్ నాట్ డిలీట్. అంటే నేనే మాన్యువల్గా డిలీట్ చేసి లోడ్ చేసాను సో దట్ యూ విల్ సీ దట్ ఎఫెక్ట్. Generally, if you want to add for new another year, I'll just go to say generate time data, say give one more year 2016, కొడితే మళ్ళీ 2016 డేట్ యాడ్ అవుతుంది, మళ్ళీ 2007 అట్లా యాడ్ చేసుకుంటూ వెళ్ళచ్చు. ఓకే బస్.
What are the September like